Welcome to Research Analytics Hub, where research gets real. In today's podcast, the analysts in our studio will discuss Katharina Sieberer-Nagler's work on positive teaching and classroom management, along with practical strategies that transform challenges into opportunities for growth and foster a supportive learning environment. Stay with us as we uncover how positive teaching strategies can turn everyday teaching into a lasting impact.
Okay, let's dive into something that feels, well, absolutely foundational.
Yeah.
Not just for teaching, but really for any environment where learning happens. We're exploring what makes teaching truly effective, sort of digging into the nitty-gritty of classroom management and how to actually create that positive space, where knowledge can really land for you.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a really practical paper as our source today, packed with insights. It's maybe especially relevant for primary teachers, but honestly, these principles stretch way beyond that.
They really do.
So our mission is to kind of cut through the detail, pull out the most valuable nuggets, and understand the core ideas that, well, drive successful teaching and, by extension, effective learning for you listening.
Right.
And get ready, because there are some genuinely surprising findings in here. Things you think you know about discipline, maybe, or how teachers see themselves, but seen through a different lens.
And that's just it. That's what's so important. Classroom management isn't, it's not just about control or keeping things quiet.
Right. Not just order.
No. It's about deliberately shaping the environment, the interactions, how time and space are used, all to maximize your opportunity to learn. This deep dive isn't abstract theory. It's really rooted in practical strategies, things that have a direct impact on the daily learning experience.
Okay, so let's unpack that then. The paper starts by defining what classroom management is. What's the scope here, according to the source?
It's pretty comprehensive. It's defined as basically everything a teacher does. Organizing students, space, time, materials, all to facilitate learning.
Everything.
Yeah, the big goal. To allow students to reach their maximum potential. And, importantly, to develop appropriate behaviors. It's called an essential skill for all teachers. Involves everything from setting up the room.
A physical layout.
Exactly. To establishing routines, rules, managing how everyone interacts.
That makes sense. It's like the whole ecosystem of the classroom.
Yeah.
But speaking of managing interactions, the source points out that misbehavior, discipline, it's been a persistent problem, a major problem for a long time, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the scale of it is one of those surprising things the paper highlights. Discipline has been ranked as a top problem for teachers for nearly, get this, 40 years.
40 years. Wow.
Yeah, starting way back around 1968, apparently.
So this isn't new.
Not at all. And the impact is pretty stark. The source quotes stats showing some teachers lose between 30% and sometimes an astonishing 80% of their time just dealing with discipline stuff.
80%. That's almost unbelievable.
It's huge. And there was an American Federation of Teachers survey mentioned. It found 17% of teachers lost 4 or more hours a week. Another 19% lost 2 to 3 hours. Just due to disruptive students.
Think about that lost learning time.
Exactly. Not just for the student causing the disruption, but for everyone else in the room, too. Aggressive, disruptive behavior. It's not just frustrating. It actively wastes learning time. It can threaten safety, and it's a huge factor in just overwhelming teachers.
Losing that much time, it really hammers home how crucial effective management is. So if discipline is such a big drain, how do the most effective teachers approach it differently? The source makes a really important distinction here, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And this is a key nugget, I think. The distinction between discipline and punishment. The paper is very clear. They're not the same thing.
Okay. Discipline versus punishment.
Right. And discipline, as it's framed here, is a much more constructive process. It's aimed at teaching, at growth.
How so?
Well, it lists 4 things discipline does that punishment just cannot do.
Okay.
1, it shows students exactly what they should have done in that situation.
Wow.
It gives them the alternative.
Okay. The positive action.
Precisely. 2, it gives students ownership of the problem, at a level they can actually handle.
Right. Empowers them a bit.
3, it provides students with options for solving the problem or making amends.
Yeah.
Gives them agency.
Choices.
And 4, and this is critical, it leaves students with their dignity intact.
Dignity. Yeah, that feels important.
Hugely. So discipline, then, is the response to misbehavior, sure, but it's an action taken with the intent to teach and guide rather than just penalize.
That really reframes the whole thing. It's not just stopping the unwanted behavior, it's about actively teaching the wanted behavior.
You got it.
And that links to another point the source makes, that most classroom behavior is actually learned.
Exactly. The paper really emphasizes that classroom behavior isn't like innate, it's learned. It's shaped by consequences, by the specific context of the classroom.
So it can be taught.
Yes. And a core principle from this is focusing on what children actually do, observing their actions, rather than just sticking labels on them like hyperactive.
Why avoid labels?
Well, the source notes that labels can sometimes become a bit of an excuse for inaction by the teacher. Oh, they're just hyperactive, instead of looking at the behavior in the context.
I see. Focus on the observable.
Right. And because behavior is learned, positive reinforcement is vital. When students show the behaviors you want, especially new ones, making sure they get positive reinforcement is crucial.
And how should that look?
The paper stresses directing it at the behavior itself, not framing it like the person is inherently good or bad. So that was really helpful how you shared the blocks, not just, you're a good boy.
Focus on the action, not the person. Got it. So it's this active teaching of behavior, not just reacting. Beyond these techniques, though, what about the teacher's broader presence? The source talks about the teacher as a model, a motivator.
Yeah, that comes through strongly. The teacher's own passion, their enthusiasm for the subject, that's highlighted as a really powerful motivator for students.
Makes sense. Enthusiasm is contagious.
It is. There's a quote in the paper, something like, when teachers present a topic with enthusiasm, students are likely to adopt this same attitude. But importantly, it has to be genuine. Kids see through fake enthusiasm.
Oh, definitely. What else about modeling?
Simple things, really, but effective. Using student names. Acknowledging and reinforcing when they participate, even small contributions. And physically moving around the classroom, engaging with students, not just staying at the front.
Keeping present.
Exactly. The paper also touches on teacher development through reflection. Suggests keeping a journal.
A journal for teachers.
Yeah, as a way for them to become more aware of their own thought processes, maybe spot recurring mistakes, ask themselves questions about what they observed in class. It takes discipline, obviously.
Sure.
But it's presented as a really accessible way to foster continuous improvement. Self-awareness.
It really sounds like the teacher's internal state, their mindset, their self-awareness, that's just as important as the techniques they use externally.
Absolutely fundamental.
What about setting expectations? How does that fit in?
Oh, clear expectations are crucial.
Yeah.
The source kind of frames effective teaching around answering 3 key questions. Who are my students? What should they learn? And critically, what do I do when they don't learn?
That last one feels key.
It is. High academic expectations are necessary, the paper argues, but they absolutely must be coupled with support. Skillful teachers are good at clearly stating the learning goals and helping students see the value in challenging work, even when it's difficult.
So high bar, but lots of scaffolding.
Precisely. The paper also adds a dose of realism about expectations, which I found interesting. It pushes back against the idea that learning must always be fun and easy.
Oh, why is that?
It suggests portraying it that way can actually do students a disservice. Think about it. If everything's supposed to be easy and fun, there's no reward for pushing through something hard, and you feel bored or like a failure when you aren't constantly entertained.
Huh. That's a counterintuitive point.
It is. It suggests students need to accept that, well, some parts of school life and learning are just challenging, maybe even a bit tedious sometimes. It's part of the process.
So manage expectations about the process of learning itself.
Yeah. And this ties directly into the need for clear rules. Students need really unambiguous do's and don'ts. No confusion about what's acceptable behavior. Vague rules, or rules that aren't applied consistently. They just create confusion and make effective management impossible.
Clear rules, realistic expectations, a positive teacher model. How do all these pieces kind of come together? What do they create?
They create the overall atmosphere,
Yeah.
what the paper calls the classroom climate.
Climate, okay.
Yeah, the social, emotional, physical environment. A positive climate. It feels safe, respectful, welcoming, supportive. It's the kind of place where positive relationships can actually flourish.
And that feeling matters for learning.
Immensely. When students feel that sense of safety and belonging, they're much more likely to engage, to actually like school, and ultimately to like learning.
Makes sense.
Meeting mutual needs is also part of this climate. When students can see the purpose, the value in what they're learning, why it matters to them, it fosters this sense of partnership, like the teacher and students are a team working towards a common goal.
A sense of shared purpose?
Exactly. And underpinning all of this, the source says, is the teacher's attitude. It's presented as absolutely fundamental, the prerequisite for all the other techniques to actually work.
Attitude is everything.
Pretty much. The paper notes that negative attitudes are learned, just like behaviors, and they can be changed by deliberately altering your thinking. There's a powerful quote. Something like, "Thoughts help control feelings. Therefore, if you change your thinking, the state of your feelings may be altered."
So conscious effort to shift perspective.
Right. And developing empathy is part of this. Trying to, walk in another's shoes, understanding the challenges parents face or what a student might be going through. That helps teachers be more supportive, build stronger relationships. Positive thoughts, the paper argues, actively enrich those connections.
It's really striking how much comes back to the teacher's intentional approach, creating that positive foundation first. Let's shift gears slightly and look at some specific factors related to learning and motivation that the source gets into.
Sure. Well, motivation itself is described pretty simply. The energy that gives behavior, direction, and focus. What helps you persist towards goals?
Okay, and what drives that in the classroom, according to this?
Several key things are highlighted. First, feedback and praise. These are essential.
Okay.
Providing regular feedback comments, grades, quick checks that helps students see where they are, minimizes confusion, lets them correct errors quickly.
What makes feedback effective?
The source says effective feedback is constructive, appropriate, immediate, and specific. Vague feedback doesn't help much. And praise, while important, is most impactful when it's sincere and feels natural, not, forced or generic.
Authenticity matters. Got it. What else?
Then there's memorable teaching. This is about the teacher's expressiveness.
How they deliver the material.
Yeah, how they use their voice, face, body language, gestures. All that helps capture and maintain student interest. The paper also reminds teachers to respect student processing time. Don't just lecture nonstop.
Pauses are important.
Very. Short pauses during lectures for students, maybe review notes, jot down a question, or just think. It's not only helpful for them, but it also gives the teacher a chance to gauge understanding. See who's with them.
Point. What about anxiety? That comes up too, right?
Yes, the source addresses anxiety directly. It notes it has two sides. The mental part, the worry, and the physical symptoms, the affective part.
And how does it impact learning?
Well, too much anxiety can really interfere. It can lead to difficulty focusing, maybe acting out, withdrawing completely, poor performance on tests.
Yeah.
The works.
But isn't a little anxiety sometimes motivating? Like pretest nerves?
Yes, the paper acknowledges that. A little bit of anxiety can motivate, but excessive, debilitating anxiety, that absolutely hinders performance. Teachers need to be aware of individual student anxiety levels. And interestingly, the paper suggests that for complex tasks, moderate motivation might actually be better than really intense motivation. Too much pressure can backfire.
Finding that sweet spot. What about learning goals?
The type of goal matters a lot for motivation. The paper cites some research, Wiseman and Hunt, noting that goals that are moderately difficult, specific, and achievable in the near future, those are the most effective for boosting motivation and persistence.
So, not too easy, not too hard, clear and soon.
Exactly. Goals that are super complex, vague, way too challenging, seem unimportant, or are just too simple. They're much less motivating.
Makes intuitive sense. And active learning.
Crucial. Students learn by doing. Simple as that. Effective teachers create dynamic environments where students get opportunities to practice skills, apply knowledge, really engage throughout the lesson.
Not just passive listening.
Definitely not. The source suggests teachers should ask themselves things like, how much time were my students actively engaged in learning today, not just sitting there? Or how many students look checked out? It's a good self-check.
And questioning. How does that fit in?
Questioning is highlighted as absolutely key. Effective teachers tend to use a greater proportion of higher-level questions, the why and how questions, to stimulate deeper thinking. Though, realistically, the majority of questions overall still tend to be lower-level recall stuff.
So, a mix is needed, but push for higher-order thinking.
Right. And classroom discussion is valuable too, but it needs preparation by the teacher and careful summarizing at the end to pull the threads together.
Okay, that's a really rich set of strategies. Now, the source also included insights from a research project, right, with primary teachers. What did that study reveal, especially about where teachers might need more support?
Yeah, this study was interesting. It was a 5-month project, 13 primary teachers involved. They used questionnaires, teachers filled them out, so did their director and observations. The goal was to see what factors were important in their classrooms and where the teachers themselves felt they needed more knowledge or skills.
And what came out of it?
Well, here's one of those really striking findings, maybe a bit counterintuitive again. The study found a significant mismatch between how teachers rated themselves and how they were seen by external observers or their director.
Oh, in what way?
Less effective teachers often had a higher opinion of their own skills. The paper puts it bluntly. They rarely recognize their weaknesses.
Wow, a blind spot.
Exactly. Whereas the very good teachers, they were more reflective, more self-critical. They could see flaws or areas for improvement, even in their already effective practice.
So the best are toughest on themselves.
It seems so, based on this study, which really emphasizes the value of external feedback for growth, doesn't it? You can't improve what you don't even realize needs work.
Absolutely. Did the study pinpoint specific areas where these teachers felt they needed more support or knowledge?
It did. Several areas came up consistently where these primary teachers felt they needed to skill up. First, providing effective feedback and praise. Getting that right.
Okay, that came up earlier too.
Yep. Second, handling student mistakes constructively. Not just saying wrong, but using it as a teaching moment.
Right, turning errors into learning.
Third, handling questions from students effectively, being responsive and encouraging curiosity. And fourth, structuring lessons clearly. The paper noted that younger teachers, maybe less experienced ones, seem to struggle more with this aspect, creating that logical flow.
Structure is hard. Any other areas?
Yeah. Other things observed where teachers could improve included finding ways to reduce student anxiety, boosting motivation generally, using humor appropriately, that's a tricky one,
Can be.
and increasing the amount of time students were genuinely actively engaged. Active learning time.
Okay. What about specific behaviors?
Some specific behaviors noted for improvement were things like showing more enthusiasm consistently, using praise more often, but making sure it's genuine.
Sincerity again.
Yeah. Reacting positively even when students give wrong answers. Building stronger relationships with parents, that connection matters. Yeah. And simple things like using student names consistently. The study basically reinforced that effective teachers are well prepared. They have those clear rules we talked about.
With foundation.
Right. And that the overall classroom climate is absolutely crucial for whether students end up liking school and wanting to learn there.
So it really sounds like even for good, experienced teachers, there's always room to refine the craft. The source does differentiate between levels of teaching skill too, doesn't it? Like good versus master teachers.
It does, briefly. Yeah, it characterizes good teachers as those who care deeply about their students. They build strong relationships. They're supportive. They don't give up easily when a student struggles. And they understand the community they're working in.
Solid foundation. What makes a master teacher?
Master teachers seem to go further. They're described as consistently positive, really dedicated to continuously improving their own practice, always deepening their subject knowledge.
Lifelong learners themselves.
Exactly. And a key difference highlighted is that master teachers excel at helping students connect concepts across different subjects. They help students see the links, apply knowledge in meaningful, holistic ways.
Breaking down the silos.
Right. Whereas less skilled teachers might tend to keep learning isolated within just one subject. The ultimate goal of effective teaching, as described here, is really teaching students how to learn effectively for themselves, making the material relevant, meaningful, memorable for them.
So it's about empowering the learner.
Absolutely. And the key traits listed for these effective teachers, being good listeners, good questioners, being responsive, respectful, human, not taking themselves too seriously, plus clarity and that genuine enthusiasm we mentioned earlier.
Wow. Okay, that was a really thorough exploration. We started by defining classroom management way beyond just discipline.
Right, the whole ecosystem.
Looked at the surprising, frankly shocking, scale of lost learning time due to disruptions.
Yeah, those stats were eye-opening.
Unpacked that crucial difference between discipline, which teaches, and punishment, which often doesn't.
Leaving dignity intact, that was key.
And explored how behavior is learned and needs positive reinforcement, focusing on the action, not the label.
Exactly.
Then we saw how vital the teacher's own attitude, their enthusiasm, their ability to create that positive climate, how foundational that is.
It all starts there, really, connecting directly to student motivation.
And we dug into specific factors, effective feedback, memorable teaching techniques, understanding anxiety, setting those clear, motivating goals, and promoting active learning.
Lots of practical takeaways there.
And that research study really brought it home, didn't it? Highlighting how self-perception can differ from reality.
Especially the finding about less effective teachers rating themselves higher.
Right, and pinpointing concrete areas where teachers, even experienced ones, can keep growing, like feedback, handling mistakes constructively, questioning skills, lesson structure.
It just underscores that teaching truly is a craft. It requires continuous learning, self-reflection, and often benefiting from those external perspectives to see where you can improve.
It really is a journey of constant refinement, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, considering all these principles we've talked about, structuring learning environments, managing behavior constructively, fostering positive relationships, understanding motivation, whether you're a student yourself listening to this, or maybe you teach, formally or informally, or you're just trying to master a new skill for yourself, this all raises an important question, I think.
Okay, what's that?
Given all these insights about what makes teaching effective, how might you apply some of these ideas to your own learning process or maybe the environment where you typically learn to make it a more effective and maybe a more positive experience for yourself?
Thank you for listening to today's podcast from Research Analytics Hub, where research gets real. We hope today's discussion on Katharina Sieberer-Nagler's insights into positive teaching and classroom management offered you practical takeaways and fresh perspectives for creating a more engaging and supportive classroom. Until next time, keep learning, stay inspired, and continue turning research into real impact.